So hello from Green-Mopeds. So today we're doing a ride review of the Horwin CR6 on what appears to be quite a windy day. So hopefully you'll hear this fine and it won't affect things too much. But anyway, the Horwin is a Chinese bike out of China, and its nearest competitor realistically I guess is a Super Soco TC Max. We did a static review where we showed them side by side. The next real bike that this could be compared to is up a sort of magnitude of price, which you'll be getting into zero territory. And they are twice the price of this, so it's probably not a fair comparison. Whereas the Super Soco is about £800 cheaper. So I'll compare the two as we go along. But first off about this, I guess the first deciding factor is that it's not removable battery, it's fixed. They do this to basically get a bigger battery in the bike and hence gain range or allow it to support a more powerful motor. So this is a Panasonic battery, but as I said, it's not something you can take out, unlike the TC Max, which although 22 kilos, it is still removable and you can still charge it from a 13 amp plug indoors. This is charged from a 13 amp plug, it's just that you need to get close enough to a socket to be able to do it. One of the other sort of potential benefits of a fixed battery, it obviously has an inbuilt charger, so you don't have to carry that around, but it also allows them to give a more powerful charger. So on this bike, they say 0 to 80% in 3 hours. So that is quite an improvement over something like a TC Max. The TC Max has a removable charger, well, separate charger, but at the moment it's only 5 amp. They've just started releasing the CUX with a 10 amp charger, so you would think that they would start releasing the TC Max with at least the same. Obviously, if you double the ampage of the charger, you halve the charging time. So that would be a benefit that they could bring to the TC Max, I would say, quite easily. Anyway, this one, as I said, has 80% charging in 3 hours. So 3.5 hours you'd be fully charged from flat if you ever let it do that, which isn't really a recommendation, but obviously if you have to, you have to. The quoted range of this bike, and this is actually one of the reasons for me riding it today, is as they always do, they specify the best range, and that is typically at the slowest speed. So this one says about 120 kilometers, so 90 odd miles, but that would be at essentially 28 miles an hour, which you wouldn't really buy this bike to ride at that speed, bearing in mind it does about 60, which is something else we're going to be testing today. So more realistically is probably more of a figure of 60 miles. But as I say, we're sort of testing that theory today, so it might turn out to be less or more. Okay, so 60 miles, let's say 4 hours of charging, worst case, 3.5 more likely, and 60 mile an hour speed. The maximum power of this bike, if you were to compare it to a TC Max, is 1.2 kilowatts more. So this is 6.2 kilowatt versus the TC Max at 5 kilowatt maximum power. Remember, as we always do, there are 3 ways of rating power. So this is 5 kilowatt nominal versus TC Max 5 kilowatt max. So on your V5 on this bike, you'll see 5 kilowatts, not 6.2 kilowatts. So maximum power 6.2 kilowatts. Bearing in mind that 1500 watts is 2 horsepower, you're looking at 8 horsepower sort of thing. Okay, so that might cause some of the petrol guys to think, well, that's not a lot, but of course it's a different way of using it. It's a more efficient way of using it than a petrol bike. So you know, you won't happen to see electric bikes unless you get into the Zero and Energicas quoting horsepower that's anything like a petrol equivalent bike. That's just the way it is. You know, at the low end of the range, you're talking about bikes that don't even have 2 horsepower. So a Super Soco CUX or a NIU MQI Sport, they don't even have 2 horsepower. So it is a different way of talking about it. So this bike is powered by or driven by a chain. TC Max is a belt. The sort of net of that is the chain needs oil, the belt probably needs checking of the tension, so not a lot of difference in the grand scheme of things in terms of maintenance. Hopefully you can hear over the wind that there is some noise that this bike makes, which some people prefer over running silently that you get from a hub motor. But yeah, there is some noise made. So we're cruising along at 37. This bike does have 2 modes, not 3 like a TC Max. So we'll be testing out the maximum speeds in a minute later on. But this feels like it's getting towards the limit in 1. So it looks like high 30s in mode 1 is what you're going to get. As I said, the quoted maximum speed of this bike is 60, so we'll eventually get to somewhere to try this. You'll be pleased to know that unlike a TC Max, this bike's indicators do make noise, which hopefully you can hear. Lots of people don't like the TC Max being silent on the indicators, or any other bike for that matter. So you see the dashboard is simply laid out. You've got revs, and beneath the digital section you've got the miles per hour. You've got distance travelled, a quoted range. So this started off at 12 miles, so I've done 5 miles and it's already quoted me 40 mile left, which obviously that makes its range more like 45. But you have to also remember that these bikes sort of you have to sort of wear them in a little bit. Often you'll see that after you charge them 3 or 4 times, you'll get an improved range and actually an improved performance, which is a little bit unusual, I suppose, because, well, in some respects it's similar to, you know, driving a petrol car in when you first buy it. But it does seem to be that you need to charge these bikes 3 or 4 times before you get the most out of them. The other thing about this bike compared to a TC Max is obviously because they've managed to stuff more battery into it, the end result is that they have done, but the bike is heavier. So this bike is probably about 18 to 20 kilos heavier than a TC. So this is about 138 kilos. It's more substantial in terms of just generally it looks bigger, even though it's essentially the same size. It's got the same size wheels, but it's wider along the body. This tank that you see, which isn't actually obviously a tank, it just helps to give the bike more of a sort of presence than TC Max. In the tank you can store essentially the charging cable, which is basically a kettle lead, and then they give you a little mini toolkit and your mobile phone and disc locks, stuff like that, but that is all the storage. Having said that, that is still more than you get in most bikes. TC Max, you have a little tray which you can put your charger in, but nothing else at all, basically. So you do have a little bit of an option for that. The seat is bigger, wider, longer, more comfortable for two people. This bike can obviously carry a second person, just like the TC Max can, but there's more room for that person. And also you notice one of the complaints or bit of feedback from the first versions of the TC Max was that they came out with a flat handlebar, and some people felt that riding position was too far forward. They've now remedied that, but as you see on the Horwin, it does have a kinked handlebar anyway, so it's more of an upright position. One of the things I do have to highlight, or one of the little finicky things about this bike that I'm not too fond of, is that the mirrors are fixed. You can't adjust them once they're screwed in. This bit, there's actually a screw here that fixes them into position. So if you want to adjust them while you're riding, basically you can't, which means you have to basically set up the bike before you leave with a spanner before you can actually get going. So it makes them a little bit, in fact I'd go so far as to say I'd replace them, because often when you're riding you want to be able to adjust the mirrors, and see, I've moved that now, but that's actually released the bolt, which basically means I would have to tighten it up after a while. So a little bit of feedback. The other big difference about this bike is the way Horwin are trying to appeal to, in some respects, the traditionalist. By that I mean that normally on every other electric bike in this sort of category, not maybe higher up into Zeros and Energicas, but there is usually brakes on both the handlebars, both sides of the handlebars. Okay, so you've got your CBS, combined braking system, and then you've got your rear brake. Horwin have decided to leave the foot brake on this bike. Okay, so underneath my right foot, just as you would find on a petrol bike, you have a foot brake, which I guess if you're used to it on a petrol bike, then transitioning over makes it more normal, although of course you still have to forget about the gears. But for people who are just used to electric, it's a little bit strange, because I'm pretty much used to electric now. So I'm often thinking, okay, I'm only going to use my right hand, forget about my right foot. So some would argue that it's almost not necessary to sort of pander to that traditionalist feeling. But yet they're going a step further with the CR6 Pro, which is also forthcoming, and making it fully manual. Okay, so it will have a clutch and gears, which again, is it something that was missing? We have had traditionalists or people come over for test rides on their big petrol bikes and can't get used to the fact that they have to forget about their feet and just use these modes rather than gears. Maybe it will work for them, but it does seem an interesting thought that they've had to do this combination of sort of traditional and electric. TC Max is fully one way of doing it, literally just forget about your feet, there's nothing to do with your feet. So here we are with sort of, hopefully you're still hearing me, we are on the A3, so let's just see how fast this thing does go. So I did happen to pick one of the windiest days this year to try and do this, so I'm not too surprised that this is struggling a little bit. So we're basically at 52 now. It's quite a strong headwind, and that is probably all we're going to get out of it. You can probably really hear the wind blowing on us now. Yeah, it's not going to do any more than 50 on these conditions. I'll turn it round and go back the other way, maybe that'll help. But yeah, 52 in these sorts of conditions. So that is essentially the same as a TC Max. And what you will probably be asking yourself at the end of it, would you choose a TC Max or a CR6? And of course, it comes down to if they're basically doing the same range and the same speed, albeit on a TC Max with less power, would you pay the £800 more? So, good question, I'll leave you to ponder that. We've now got to 57, but of course, again, we are fighting this headwind. It's actually a side wind as it goes, so not that great to be doing a speed test. Anyway, we'll turn it around and go back and see what happens on the way back when we get to the next junction. Okay, so we're now going to see how fast it goes from 0 to top. As you've seen, it's pretty windy, but hopefully that won't affect anything. So we'll put the time up after we've done it. Okay, let's go. Okay, so 40. 47, 48, 50. So once you get above 50, the rest is crawling, basically. 57 now. 58. 59. So 59, 58. That's it's touching 60. I guess we're in the shadow of this lorry, which might be helping. But yeah, it could touch 60. It was a bit of a slow climb to it, but it did make it. It's now quoting with 70% left, 20-mile range, which seems to suggest it's going to rapidly drop off if I keep up this speed. But we've only done 12 miles so far. So hopefully that's given you some indication of this bike's performance. As I said, in summary, it's £800 more than a TC Max. You might choose a TC Max merely for the fact that it's got a removable battery. On paper, the TC Max says it will do about this speed. Certainly with the new controller in the 2020 model, it is quoted at doing 60 miles an hour. Obviously it's got quite a significant difference in power, 1200 watts difference in power, which essentially could mean the difference between how comfortably it maintains that speed or gets to that speed. But I have to say I like the bike, I like the position. I happen to like this colour. It comes in 4 colours: racing green, blue, black and white. TC Max is any colour as long as it's black, unless you go around changing panels from a TC, which is an option. You can possibly do that for £200 more. The weight of the bike is great. It's very comfortable, more comfortable than a TC Max, I would say, because the seat is more substantial. Similar design, but the question is, would you pay over £5,000 for this one, or spend £4,200 on a TC Max? So I hope that gives you some insight into how this bike performs. Obviously, any questions, please let us know. And you can find more information on our website of green-mopeds.com. And thanks very much.